A recent report by the Washington Post is highlighting the number of school lockdowns in America and the impact that they have on students, including some as young as elementary school age.
The Washington Post found that a lockdown occurred in this country on every single school day between Labor Day 2017 and Memorial Day 2018, impacting more than 4 million students. So Stephen Rich is the database editor for the investigations unit at the Washington Post, and you're going to talk a little bit about some of these startling numbers. What is prompting the frequency of these school lockdowns? I mean, is there really a reason?
I mean, in America, gun violence is every day, everywhere, and that means that schools are going to lock down because there's gun violence that runs right across these campuses, that runs up against the edge of them, and so these schools are going to lock down because they have to. They have to try to keep the kids as safe as they can.
You know, your piece is a really extensive report, and I read it over the holiday, and it was so interesting to me because I did a story for CBS this morning on kids who go through school lockdowns, and these were like 3rd and 4th graders, 5th graders, and they've been going through this. I think what was mind-boggling to me is that they've been doing this since they were in kindergarten. So little kids are used to this, but for those of us who are adults, we are not. Explain what happens to our audience when a school gets locked down and what students have to do.
So when a school locks down, oftentimes the lights go out, students have to huddle in a corner of a classroom, doors lock down. This is the most extreme lockdown, but it happens quite often. And they're often reassuring each other, making sure that everyone is okay, and these things can last for hours potentially, and they may not know what happens afterward, and so it can cause, in a lot of these kids, lasting trauma because they think that they're actually in the line of fire. And when a shooting like Parkland happens, in the immediate aftermath, every lockdown feels like it's the end for these kids, and so the trauma is doubled and tripled.
You spoke to a psychiatrist that called this a pressing public health issue. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I have a 7-year-old. I think she's only actually had to do one of these. I don't think she even really knew what was going on, but clearly other children do.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of kids are deeply affected by this. We found plenty of kids who had written wills, who had soiled themselves, who had texted their families goodbye, and this is having a major effect on a lot of these kids. And we'd have no idea, because this is sort of the lockdown generation, what's going to happen when they grow up. We don't know, but we know that a lot of these kids no longer feel safe in their schools.
You know, Stephen, one of the things that I thought was really interesting when I was at this school in Ohio talking to some of these children, and there was a heartbreaking moment where during the lockdown period, they were told to grab something, anything, to protect themselves. And they were grabbing, it was so sad, they were grabbing like pencil books and scissors. And I wonder, on the flip side of what we were just talking about, if there at some level is a level of reassurance that the kids have. In their minds, they're told, hey, if you grab something to protect yourself, this will help in case of a potential shooter. Or is it really the opposite, that kids go home? I did ask them if they were afraid, and they said, of course we're scared, and we're scared that our friends and our teachers can be hurt, but that they did take some reassurance in knowing that they were doing something, anything, to protect themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen this kind of training in a lot of places where kids are taught to fight back. What we know about that training, at least, is that it's not really effective, especially because you have no idea what children are going to do when an actual shooter enters a building. You know, most people in a fight or flight scenario are flight, and that is doubly for kids. So it may be reassuring to some, but in a lot of cases, you know, many of these children are realizing that the reason that they're grabbing things to fight back is because there might actually be a shooter in their hallways, which is terrifying.
So your report points out that these lockdowns occur regardless of demographics, affluence, location, security. You know, what does that say to you?
I mean, this is the problem is, in effect, a symptom of America's gun problem. You know, as long as there is gun violence in every single community, there will be lockdowns in every single community, because any threat of gun violence is potentially a valid threat. It's not that difficult to get a gun in America. It's not that difficult for kids to get a hold of guns in America. And so every potential threat to a school has to be taken seriously, and is.
Indeed, well, Steve Rich, it's a sobering report. It's something that I certainly consider, having a child in school at the age where she's, doing this sort of thing. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.